Hello, everyone, and welcome to our World Photography Day live stream brought to you by the Florida Wildlife Federation. My name is Morgan, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today to celebrate the beauty of wild Florida. At the Florida Wildlife Federation, we've spent almost 90 years protecting Florida's incredible ecosystems, from rivers and wetlands to forests and coastlines. We know that connecting with nature through exploration, including photography, is one of the best ways to conserve these special places. We recognize that photography is more than art. It is a way to capture moments that tell stories and inspire action. We host an annual photo contest to bring together photographers of all skill levels, from beginners to experts, to highlight the beauty of wildlife and landscapes and offer a platform to introduce others to conservation. We were blown away by thousands of incredible photos submitted for this year's theme, Florida in Focus, including a few that we are highlighting now. Our expert judges had the difficult decision of choosing winners, and we would like to thank them for volunteering their time and expertise. Thanks to Liz Atterbury, Peter Gerbert, and Federico Acevedo. Today, we're honored to be joined by three of our photo contest winners. We have Parks Marilla. He is a wildlife photographer based out of West Central Florida. His photograph of a gopher tortoise won first place in our wildlife category. Marcos Rodriguez is a wildlife photographer based in Central Florida. His photograph of a Florida scrub jay took home first place in the birds category. And finally, we have Stan Cottle. He is a landscape and architectural art photographer in Northeast Florida. His image of Amelia Island earned him first place in the landscape category. So tonight, these photographers will share their winning images, the stories behind them, and tips for capturing wild Florida. Whether you're exploring photography for fun, for recreation, or you may have a deeper mission to promote conservation, we hope that you enjoy tonight's live stream. At the end of our discussion, we will also be having a Q&A with our audience. So you can ask these photographers your own questions by dropping them in the comments. So we'll get to it. Settle in and let's celebrate the power of photography to protect wild Florida. So let's get to know each one of you panelists a little bit better. Let's start with Parks. Can you share when you first became interested in photographing wild Florida?
Yeah, so I was in school in Ohio when my parents moved down here. I'm actually from Massachusetts. And I'd come and visit them on breaks, and pretty much my whole winter break was spent chasing after owls and snakes and whatever I could find. And then since I moved here in 2023, I've just fallen in love with it. You know, there's any park or preserve you go to, there's tons of subjects, birds everywhere, reptiles year round. So yeah, 2023.
That's awesome. Well, we're glad to have you here. What about you, Marcos?
Sorry, trying to get to the mute button.
You're
I got into photography around 2015. I think my muse was my dog Heisenberg, an Australian Shepherd. I bought my first camera to do that. A year after we got him, we relocated back to Central Florida, and making the switch from my dog to all the wildlife that we have here, it was kind of like a natural transition, especially because there's a lot to see here. Since then, I've gotten, I'm an engineer by trade, so I'm very technical. So I did fall in love with the technicality of what photography kind of entails, and I'm self-taught, so a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of like self-training to be able to get to where I'm at now. It's always interesting because once you get into photographing wildlife and the technical challenge that it takes, and then seeing how many people do it out there, you always feel that there's so much more to see, and there's so much more that you need to learn to be able to capture everything. So being in Florida is just like a blessing, because you get all of your birds are here like year round, right? Because of the weather, and then you also get all of the migration and all of the birds that come in and to visit, right? So yeah, it's been about 10 years, and still a lot more to see for me.
Great. And that's a great point that, we're so lucky to be in a state that has such a diverse range of wildlife year round that we can capture. So thank you.
Yes.
What about you, Stan? Can you share a little bit more about your background and when you became interested in wild Florida?
Absolutely. My career has been marketing communications, and in doing that, I create motion film, video, and commercial photography for clients, corporate clients. It wasn't until I went out in nature in Florida with my father-in-law, Len Messinio. He actually opened my eyes, quite literally, to how beautiful wild Florida is and how wonderful it is to be able to capture it, your perspective on that with a camera. So I've been hooked on it since then, and it's growing. It started as a hobby, and it's grown into some gallery representation and some sales of my work. So it's a direction I look forward to deepening as I go forward.
That's great. Yeah, we have a lot to think when we think about the people that first introduced us to photography. So it sounds like all of you do this as a hobby. Is this something that anyone would like to do full time?
That's the dream.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, after the last 2 weeks I had on my real job, I'm just waiting for National Geographic to give me a call so I can jump.
That is the true dream for sure.
That is the true dream.
So I would love to know what's everyone's favorite subject to photograph?
That's tough. I don't know if I could choose one. Birds are great because, there's just so many different photo options. They fly, their wings change shape. It's just ever changing photo opportunities. But then you have to have the bobcats and shooting bears. I mean, just the adrenaline rush that comes with that, and seeing a bobcat come out of the thicket and stare your lens down is exhilarating. But I think I would probably go with snakes. I've been obsessed with snakes since I was little. I just find their patterns fascinating and just a fascinating animal, and tough to photograph in most cases, to get their eye in focus. Small eyes, different lenses. If you're shooting macro, you don't want to spook the snake. So, yeah.
I think Marcos might know about snakes based on his background.
Yeah, so that's why I love birds. So birds are my favorite subject to shoot because it's so it took me so long to actually get good at taking bird pictures. They're so common, so that's one thing. But they're good because they're plentiful. You can go outside, you can see birds almost all the time. But then what makes it the most interesting for me is that I have to learn patterns. I have to learn how the different birds behave to be able to try to capture the best shots when they come out. So learning those patterns is I think as the years have gone by and I've gotten better technically on how to take pictures, it's what continues me to get me engaged, because every single time I see a new bird, I need to learn how he behaves when he's eating, mating, flying around, when he's gonna take off, things that kind of spook them with things that might actually have them do some certain behaviors that you want to capture. So birds by far. Oh, and I'm from the Pokemon era, so for me catching bird pictures is like catching Pokemon. So it's gotta part of my thing too.
I love that. I love that comparison. Go ahead, Stan.
I love landscape photography mainly because I want to share it with people. I want other people to see what I'm seeing while I'm there, and just how you feel when you're in a beautiful place, especially at the right time of day. And aside from that, really in conjunction, I love architecture, and that comes from having studied it and having worked around it quite a bit in my career. And again, it ties in design and beauty, it's man-made beauty, but it also involves history. And so those two genres are my chief efforts. I do dabble in other things, One of my favorite living things to photograph, believe it or not, are alligators. So you have to have a long lens and in good shoes so you can stay out of harm's way. But I enjoy being in the swamp and capturing those guys, and they're amazing. So it's all good.
Yeah. I love that. You all have such a diverse, perspective, a diverse amount of, interests of subjects that you enjoy. So uh, really, really thankful. So we're going to move into kind of an individual image discussion of the actual winning photos that each one of you had submitted into our photo contest. So we're going to start with Park's image. He won the wildlife category with his gopher tortoise image. We're going to bring that up a little bit bigger so we all can see it. Parks, can you share a little bit more about the story behind this image?
Yeah, so I was actually, so this was taken on Perico Island, which is just before you get to the bridge to enter Anna Maria Island. And I had been going there pretty much every night to photograph this juvenile pair of great horned owl siblings. And I had actually photographed them since they hatched across the street at Robinson Preserve. So I spent a lot of time with them. And I took this photo in August. So this was just before Hurricane Helene and Milton came. And I got there, I was looking for the owls, no luck yet. And then I see this gopher tortoise. And typically when I see one, they can be a little skittish and you might be walking by and they'll tuck into their burrow. But this guy did not care at all that I was there. He would actually beeline towards me and he wasn't even looking at me. He was just looking for food. So I began kind of backpedaling, walking slowly backwards with my camera about an inch above the ground. And I was just spraying and praying, I guess you could say. I was shooting pretty wide open aperture wise, so I could get the nice background blur. And this moment was right when he picked up his leg and stepped over a little palm frond. And these creatures are very resilient. You can see on his right leg a pretty good scar, and on the back of his shell, not pictured, it's cracked open like 5 inches. And these gopher tortoises are called a keystone species. So that means that their existence is vital to the survival of the ecosystem and other animals. So they dig burrows with these claws on their arms that provide shelter to, I think, around 350 other species, which is just amazing. I mean, there's really no other animal like this in Florida and East Coast. So hurricanes, I mentioned, so they dig these holes and that helps shield other species from the hurricanes that came. So I visited this place right after the hurricanes and it was amazing to see that they were still roaming. There's about 30 of them in that park. And it's interesting because this preserve used to be farmland. And I believe in around 2013, a conservation group came in and they remodeled the place and turned it into a preserve. They brought sand. They have a little sandy upland area because the tortoises like nice dry soil that they can dig their burrows in. And then there's a salt marsh. So it's great to see that a tiny little preserve that's surrounded by development and ocean is really thriving ecosystem for these gopher tortoises, with about 30 of them there.
That's great. You touched on so many things that make this such an outstanding image. It definitely showcases the habitats and the resiliency of the species and I love that you shared a little bit about how it's a keystone species. I think that a lot of people can agree that a gopher tortoise is, an iconic Florida animal. And, we were excited to feature this as one of the winning images. Are there any other technical aspects that went into making this photo? You shared a little bit about, how you're having to stand and move back. And, was there anything with the lighting that you were working with? Was there anything going on?
Yeah, so this photo was taken at the sun had gone below the trees, so just before sunset, and it was pretty overcast. So my ISO, I think, was kicked up a bit. but my shutter speed, I think, was around 1/400th of a second. And if I were to do it again, I'd probably have it around 640 or maybe a little bit higher. So I did get lucky to shutter speed. The faster your shutter speed, you freeze motion. So this guy was on the go. He was hungry. He did not stop moving for about 30 minutes. He'd chow down, then he'd keep moving to the next plant or little cactus fruit. You can actually see in his mouth hanging out, looks like a toothpick. That's a little blade of grass. But yeah, I was using autofocus eye tracking. And if you actually zoomed in on the photo, ironically, its eye is out of focus, unfortunately. And this, the scales on its cheek are in focus. So it's not perfect, but those little details, you know, you remember them, and next time you're in the field, you get them right.
Those little details, you always see them, but you know, it's funny how we're our own worst critics, because there's always other things that other people, you know, pay attention to. But that was a great point about shutter speed and about focus. You know, these are two really important aspects when photographing wildlife out, because they're moving quickly. You don't know what's going to happen. So, you know, really being in tune to your focus and your shutter speed are good points to make. Are there any other precautions that you take? So again, you were talking about, you know, stepping out and being out of the way. When photographing wildlife out in the field, are there any precautions that you take to keep both the animal and yourself safe?
Yeah, I think it's important in wildlife photography to understand your subject. So understand, I mean, watch their body language. You know, sometimes they'll make a noise, or if they dart away from you, you're probably too close. So I think understanding their behavior is very key. Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah, you want to know a little bit about the species that you're sitting in front of, hopefully at a distance, you know, using your zoom to get up close. But that's a great point.
And different times of year vary. So when birds are nesting, you know, a lot of the beaches here have terns and skimmers that nest on the beaches, and it's very important, you know, to give them their space, because they need energy to go and fish for their young, so their young can grow up and become the next generation to breed and continue. So it's important to, you know, give space, understand the time of year. Same thing with other nesting birds, owls. And then another case scenario would be if an animal's feeding, like a snake. If you find a snake and it's just choking down a fish or a frog, you don't want to get too close, because then you'll force it to regurgitate its food and have to fend for itself. So it's good we can't fully empathize with animals, because we're not, or I mean, I guess we're animals, but we're not these animals. So it's, you know, try to as good as you can.
Yeah, those are some great points. You know, let wildlife be wild. Let them, you know, be able to display their wild behaviors and not get in the way of that is one of the most important things that wildlife photographers can do. So thank you. So again, thank you, you know, for submitting this image. We're very glad that you did that and we were able to highlight it. We're going to move on now to Marcos. His stunning image of a Florida scrub jay won the birds category this year. So Marcos, can you tell us a little bit more about this image?
Sure. So there's a couple of places that are driving distance from my house that I normally go to take pictures of birds, and Mary Island Wildlife Refuge is one of those that I normally frequent. And I've had heard that they had a good sustained population of Florida scrub jays, like one of the few places that actually have them, because they're a protected species, right? So it's not like you can find them all over the place. So we're a little blessed that we do close to where I'm at. And I'll tell you something about bird photography. When somebody tells you there's a bird to be seen somewhere, 99 out of 100 times you probably won't find the bird. So that's been my experience. I normally go and drive places trying to chase one bird, and then I end up being disappointed. But that one day, it was earlier in the year, I went to Merritt Island, and I remember being in the visitor center, and I think I asked one of the employees like where I could go to see a Florida scrub jay, because even though I've been in Florida for 8 years, this is a lifer for me. It was like the first time that I've ever seen this bird in the wild. So again, the gentleman told me, hey, if you go to Pine Flat Woods, which is one of the trails over there, you might get lucky and actually see a couple, right? So I did that. I drove to the trail. I started my little bit of a walk, and right in the middle of it, like I said, I'm seeing nothing. And when I tell you nothing, there was nothing going around. So I'm getting pretty disappointed. All of a sudden I see one bird, and I go like, okay, could it be? And it was. And then from one it was two, and then from two was three. And if you've seen any Disney movie where the princess is there and all the birds are just flying around, I probably had like 5 different birds feeding of each other. I'm just flying around where I was. I couldn't even believe it. That was one of those times that I was like, is anybody like recording this? Because it didn't feel like real life for a bit. But then again, I'm just trying to take it all in, taking some pictures. But it's the first time that I see the bird, so I don't know if it's an easily scared type of bird that I only have like a couple chances to get a shot. What I came to find out, again trying to understand the patterns of the bird, is that no, it was pretty friendly. It was, because I wasn't messing with them. They were unfazed and just doing whatever they were trying to do. So I got comfortable enough to be able to time where they were going to take off from branches, fly to each other, where they were going to land. And that's why this picture was possible, right? I was able to set up my camera. I was able to actually plan the type of shot that I wanted. So I was able to get the shutter speed just at the right spot where it was going to freeze time. Even if you look at the wing, that's one of the things that when you don't have that shutter speed just precisely where it needs to be, you're going to get a lot of blur, which is good. It's actually something that it's got its appeal when you're taking photography. But when you're able to take something like this, for me, it's like it becomes a one in a 100 type of picture. It's like it just becomes very unique. So these birds gave me the gift of a lifetime. I mean, I've never been able to experience something like that, especially being the first time that I ever got out. But that's how the whole experience happened.
That's great. I think that anyone that's seen a Florida scrub jay out in the wild might have, not the exact same experience, but they're such a social bird that anytime I hear, someone talk about their encounter with a Florida scrub jay, it often, has that magical feeling because you don't get that with every species. And, they're a protected species. They're threatened in Florida. And Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge is one of the few areas in Florida that you can actually see them. And you made a great point that I wanted to touch on, that you talked with the staff about the location and where you might be able to find them. And,
Yep.
When people are out exploring their wild spaces in Florida, talking with the experts, talking with the staff, especially at our public lands, are a great way to get tips about where to go.
No, 100%.
Do you have any other information about like some of the technical aspects that went into this? Is there anything else that you'd like to highlight?
Sure. Right. So again, one of the I would be lying if I tell you that gear sometimes do matter. I mean, you can take pictures with any camera. Some of these more technical shots, I was able to use. I think Parks mentioned this before. That eye detection on the bird really allows for the face to kind of pop in. So I really ensure that when I was working my focus strategy, right, I was able to put it and frame it in a way that I knew I was going to be able to get the eye. Shutter speed, of course, right? You have to set your camera at the highest shutter speed that you can, and you also have to, depending on the time of the day, because it influences the light that goes into the camera, you also have to play with that and make sure that you reach that balance where you're fast enough, but you're not underexposing your shot, because then that will cause your picture to be grainy. Lucky enough for me, when I got to see the bird, it was later in the morning, so it wasn't early. It was probably around 11 at that point. So it's probably not the most ideal time of the day sometimes, because you do get things to get overexposed. But because I was shooting so fast, it really didn't make a difference. It actually helped me that when I found the birds, I was able to do that without losing any quality on the image. And that I mean, every time I go out, I probably take hundreds of pictures. So that's the other thing too, because I try to balance the absorbing the moment. I do say this, and it's cliche, but like when I go out on walks in nature, that's my therapy, because I do have a pretty stressful job. So it is good to just have that moment for myself and connect. You were talking a little bit about the conservation efforts for these birds. The cool thing about them is they all have a story to tell, because when you take pictures of them, if you take a look at their legs, they're actually banded, and they have different bands, and they all mean something. Either if they were relocated from somewhere, just individual identification for the bird. So it was funny photographing that, because it was like mini stories. You see one bird, and it'll have its own bling bling going on the leg, and you see all those colors. So as a photographer, right, those little details normally catch your eye too when you're taking pictures.
Yeah, yeah, almost every photo, we see of a Florida scrub jay, you can see those bands, and
Yeah,
it all goes into the research and protection behind the species. So
yeah.
thank you for sharing this image. It's a really, really great one, a powerful one for conservation.
Thank you.
Now we're going to move on to Stan's image. He submitted his photo of a expansive salt marsh in Amelia Island, and this won first place in our landscape category. Stan, can you share a little bit more about your image?
Absolutely. Amelia Island is a barrier island, and it's one of the sea island chains that run from Amelia all the way up into South Carolina. Barrier islands are super important because they protect the mainland from the ocean and the weather and erosion and so forth that happens. So Amelia is gifted with this beautiful ocean front, and I spent a lot of time on the beach and photographed the beach, and it has its certain feel and energy. And then you go to the west side of the island and you see something like this. This is a beautiful salt marsh. This is part of a park called Drummond Point Park, which is on the south end of Amelia Island. And the whole goal of shooting this type of image is to put the viewer in this place. And so you have this vanishing point perspective of the built boardwalk going over beautiful nature. And so that's the goal. You want the viewer to take a little trip through the image, starting at the end here and ending up all the way out. And coincidentally, being out at the end of this dock is pretty amazing too, because you really feel like you're just floating above this vast green space in the marsh. So I spent a lot of time in Drummond Point Park and around the south end of Amelia. And in this particular day that I took this photo, I was actually touring another photographer that I'd met at the Shrimp Festival, which is a local art festival and seafood. And we were just going around. And of course, I'm going to take him to Drummond. It's one of my favorite spots. And I knew we were there at the right time of day and so forth. And so he's very excited about this setting. And he's over, setting up his gear and his tripod and all this stuff. And I just basically politely leaned over his back and handheld this shot. Then I showed it to him off the back of the camera, and he goes, "Oh, well, we can go now." but it just captures how you feel when you see this view, and there are so many of these views, and it's just an idyllic place. It just makes you relax and enjoy nature.
I agree. I mean, I might be biased living in North Florida, but this is one of my favorite views. And, this one in our landscape in our landscape category, but it also shows, as a human, how we can fully immerse ourselves in a landscape. You can just imagine walking to the end of that boardwalk and just looking, out to this expansive, another iconic view of Florida. So it captures just a lot of great elements that showcase wild Florida. Are
Thank
there
you.
any are there any technical aspects that you would like to share that went into capturing this?
Sure. I mean, I did, again, I grabbed this really on the fly, which is,
Mhm.
it cracks me up. But when I'm out on a location, I will set my camera, I run everything in manual. Landscape photographers can do that. We don't have to focus on eyes moving, which is stunning to me to be able to do that. But no, I run everything on manual. I kind of preset. I look at the day, I measure the light, and I preset the camera so that I can be ready to capture something as it strikes me. Usually I would use a tripod for this shot. This happens to be handheld. So I had a fast enough shutter speed to capture everything sharply, and it got the horizon right and all those things that normally a tripod would lend those elements to. So my recommendation for anyone who wants to go out in nature and take a photo like this, certainly take whatever camera you have. It doesn't have to be a full frame digital camera, which is what I use for this. It could be your phone, and it could be the best camera you have is the one you have with you, right? So if you just take your time and just feel the image and get a sense of place, everything kind of falls in.
That's a great point. You can prepare and have the most expensive gear and everything, but when you just truly feel immersed in a place, it can still produce some really great photography. So thank you for sharing your image. And now we're going to bring the group back together, and we're going to continue our discussion about photography in wild Florida. So I would love to know, one of you had already touched on this already, but how do you balance trying to live in the moment while also wanting to capture this? I know that this tends to be a struggle with a lot of photographers.
I think that goes back to understanding its behavior, the animal's behavior, or for me, if I'm shooting wildlife. I'm definitely obsessed with photography, so that's tough to do. But if I am shooting a bird per se, and I'm watching it hunt, and I kind of understand the patterns and how an egret's going to catch a fish, then I might slow down on some of the other shots and kind of just watch it and observe. And then if you spend more time just observing like that, then you'll know when to click the shutter for something that's a shot that might evoke more emotion or tell more of a story.
That's a great point. We're always learning.
I agree with Parks. That was my problem. I think, if anything, I got too excited when I was out taking pictures, so I didn't understand the behavior. So what would happen is I'll get out there and I'll get shots, but they wouldn't be the shots that I was probably wanting to take, or ultimately I ended up taking. They're walking and just kind of getting in better with nature for a while, and definitely understanding, taking the time to not only understand the bird, but your surroundings, right, comes as part of the photography planning. Because again, I do see this as a technical thing more than anything else, and that's part of the challenge. So definitely, that's how I've gained this appreciation for nature and being out there.
Marcos, you hit something that I think is a valid point for anyone wanting to capture an image, is preparation. If you're prepared, then you'll typically have a sense of what it is you want to capture, where you want to go to capture it, and what time you want to be there to best capture it. And if you do those things, when you get there, then having prepared, you can relax and wait for the right moment. And that patience, with all backed by the preparation, is how you get an artful image.
Yeah,
while still enjoying the moment too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. I think you all have touched on this a little bit, but do you have any other tips for people for photographing in the outdoors? Are there any, insider tips that you'd like to share? Maybe something you always bring along in your camera bag, or
I'm gonna say it's Florida, right? Sunblock, and mosquito repellent. I mean, you need that to be out there, unless you are, going out early in the year where the weather is a lot more pleasing. Yeah, the elements are gonna be on you when you're out photographing. So you gotta always be cut prepared, right? Making sure that you have water, snacks. A lot of the places that normally photographers go to take pictures and able to capture all of this, they could be pretty out there. So you always want to be, not get yourself in a situation. So I think the essentials as far as safety need to be with you. And you're in Florida, so be aware of your surroundings because you can't step on a gator without even realizing it. And I was talking about gators before, but it's happened to me. So yeah, just be aware.
One lesson I learned early on in shooting in Florida, you have to dress properly. I was taking photos in this beautiful space called a cypress dome, and you basically are walking around in this protected floor of a swamp, and it's all cypress trees, but it's dry. The bed was dry, and I just loved it. I was there a couple of hours, got some great shots. And on the way home, I realized, because I had on shorts, that I brought some friends home with me. And so I learned you have to cover your body as much as you can and remain comfortable. But you have to protect yourself from the environment. Certainly bug spray, but dress appropriately for the environment.
great point.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that they said. And just to add, I would say bring a sense of curiosity. Try and, I like to shoot a lot of wildlife, but sometimes I like to take a landscape photo or try something more artistic with a slower shutter speed. So I just say always look for new opportunities, even if you're photographing people at a preserve, recreational. There was a category for that in this contest. So get out of your comfort zone with your subject. And I think that'll, make you a better photographer. You'll compose better. And yeah.
That's true. I mean, I have a quick story where I was in the wetlands area, a place called Wildlight. And I'm on this wooden platform. It's like a little dock, but it's right on the water. And I have a long lens and I'm shooting actually vegetation and some turtles across this pond. And they were out it was water lily time in the blooms, and also I'm really on the long end of the lens. And I see something out of the corner of my eye, and I look out, and there's an alligator in the pond coming right at me. So I swing the camera over, and I was able to take shots of him as he approached where I was standing. And I looked down and realized, okay, he can't get up in this where I am, so I'm good to stay here the way it was built. And he came all the way up and just waited. He thought I had food. I guess someone had been feeding him. And so he came up. I got some beautiful shots, just head-on shots with a long lens. But he was unexpected, but I was able to embrace that unexpectedness and get some great shots and figured out a little bit more about him as he came up. Didn't have any food for him and wouldn't have fed him if I did.
Good. I think all of you touched on this, but being prepared and treating photography just as any other recreation in Florida, safety is number one priority. Leaving no trace, respecting wildlife. It's really important to treat it just like any other recreation, and it can be grueling, just as hiking. You got to fully prepare like you're out there exploring. So thank you for all this advice. I think there's a lot of tips here for photographers. Parks, I would love to know a little bit more. What role do you think that photography plays in conservation awareness?
I think it plays a huge role. I mean, that's how I became aware of conservation awareness, growing up, just reading Nat Geo magazines. And, video is great, but that's not accessible to everyone. Not everyone has a screen to look at. So I think that images also, as I mentioned earlier, they can, the sense of pathos, they can evoke emotion. You really study it, you can see the detail in a still format, where I think that you can just develop a better appreciation for it. So I think that, it's important that people see these images and, if they feel a certain way towards them, then to reflect on that feeling.
Feelings. Yeah, that's, photography is such a powerful tool to evoke that. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add about using photography to promote conservation?
Well, my whole purpose in being a nature photographer or an art photographer is to capture images of our natural environment and show them to other people, share them, so that they appreciate our environment and not want to bulldoze an area and build condos, for an example. That they would slow down and just appreciate what's there and hopefully go out and witness it for themselves because they saw an image.
Yeah, I think my winning picture, just to kind of cap it off, like is the epitome of that, right? You have a bird that you can only find in this area, right, in Florida. So imagine what a loss it will be for all of us, right? If a species like that were just to be lost because they're losing natural habitats and or they're just being eradicated some other way from our area. So photography can show, like I said, shows you that the beauty that they bring to our lives, and not only that, but it also displays all the great things that that are cheap and easy for people to go enjoy, because you can get out there fairly cheap and just enjoy what's around you.
And hopefully, you're all capturing these images that we're hoping that future generations will be able to enjoy. So you're capturing this image in time to continue to protect these places and these species. And thank you, on behalf of conservationists everywhere. That's really important. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I have one more question before we turn it over to our audience Q&A. If you had to offer one piece of advice to anyone when you had started, thinking back, when you had started wildlife photography, what's one piece of advice you wish you had?
So I'd say focus on telling a story. When I started photography, wildlife photography, I was obsessed with, just getting the perfect portrait, just as close up as I can, get as many details in the fur or feathers, whatever. But I think it's important to zoom out sometimes, because that's not always the best answer. So focus on telling a story. Look for different elements that you can pull in that would help do that. Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing that I'll tell myself at the beginning, because I got it as a piece of feedback, is as you embark in your photography journey, make that an extension of yourself. And what I mean by that is, like, work towards finding your own signature, your own personality, right? How nature kind of reflects through you. Because I think that's what, everybody can go out there and take a picture of the same bird, the same animal, but the way people learn on how to own it and make it their own is gonna make, like Park say, even your journey part of a story, because everything is gonna create that. I think at the beginning, I struggled with that a lot, because I just wanted to do everything and take everything. So I wasn't enjoy. That what that drives to is, there's times where you fall off from your passion and taking pictures because you feel kind of lost. If you focused and you try to work on that journey, that story, that will ensure that you stay engaged with photography in whichever genre interests you for the long run.
I think those are both beautiful statements. I would add to someone getting started is start with a mentor. Go with a photographer who has more experience and learn from them, because photography can be a science, but it's also an art. And I think a mentorship is so important, to just transfer that knowledge from someone who has experience to someone who's eager to learn it. And once you get over the initial challenge of managing a device, a camera, and you get past that, the tool now is in your hand. The fun and the passion comes from capturing something that you experience so you can share it with someone else. Mentorship is a key to speed that up.
That's a great point. Something we don't always think about. There's a lot of people out there that could help us along in our journeys. So, great advice. Thank you all. We have a couple questions on deck from our audience. So we're going to start with the first one. What is one photo that you're still chasing or trying to get of wild Florida?
I spent a fair amount of time. I probably hiked hundreds of miles in Fakahatchee Strand Preserve State Park, and I still have yet to see the Florida panther, but that would just be incredible. I've watched Carlton Ward. I have his book too, The Path of the Panther, and evoking emotion. That's what he does with his work, and I think that would just be incredible to see an animal that's rebounded from, I don't know exactly. I know it was double-digit numbers back in the 70s, I believe, now to 200 some today, and now they're making their way north. So that animal, being able to see it and photograph it would just be incredible, as it is a symbol of a successful ecosystems in Florida. If there's less panthers, then that is telling for other species. So,
I actually had this shot that I wanted badly for years. And I was able to achieve it finally. But the shot was, from walking on the beach. I like to walk on the beach around sunrise. And often I would see, well, not often, but sometimes I would see a flock of pelicans skimming just above the surface of the water. And then the leader would come up and they would all follow him and make this beautiful arcing dance with the sunrise behind it. And I tried it so many times. Most of the time I saw that, I didn't have a camera. But when I did, I finally got the shot. It took me about 5 years to actually capture that shot. So that felt good.
Yeah, well, for me, I'm not gonna rehash everything. Is what Parks just said. I mean, I think that's every Florida photographer dream will be to see a Florida panther. Plus, I graduated from FIU. Golden Panthers. It is even my mascot. So that would be great. Just coming across one and being able to photograph it.
That is a dream. That would be a dream, I think, for anyone from a good distance away. Being able to see a panther out in its natural habitat, and talk about a conservation success story, an ongoing conservation story. We do have a question from Kate on Facebook about mentorship. Where can we find a mentor? Do you have any photo meetup groups, or do you have any other examples of that, Stan?
Most communities have camera clubs, and that's a collection of photographers of all skill levels. That's a good place to start. And they have occasionally, I know on Amelia, but also in Illinois when I lived there, the camera clubs will occasionally invite the public to go out on a walk around. And it is a way to introduce a newcomer to photography. So yeah, camera clubs.
That's great.
I like to, go ahead, Marcos.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, so one of the things that we haven't touched on, but is true, is that this community, if you have a camera out there and you go to places where there's other people with cameras, you're going to make a lot of friends. I've made so many friends, and a lot of the people that I talk about photography or where to find a certain species, there are normally people that I found on the trails. Just quick anecdote. Like one of my best friends in photography, we became friends because we all found each other taking pictures, and we looked at each other, and we had the exact same gear. And we looked like a clone of each other because we looked the same. Two guys with the same cameras, and then we started talking about that. And that was probably like 6 7 years ago. And that guy, especially because we both have this passion about photography, we talk about the technical aspects of it. We kind of challenge each other because it's always that good healthy competition. Yeah, you see, oh, he's taking that picture. I gotta take something similar. So we do things like that. We walk together every now and then when time permits. But yeah, a lot of those mentors they will come organically if you're just willing to connect. Also, not only with the wildlife, but with the people out there capturing it. There's a community to be made, and I made some really good friendships out of that.
Yeah, I second that. Just hanging out with people in the field, especially when you're photographing the same subject, and you can kind of check out each other's shots after, and ask them questions. What settings did they use? And then you might get some insights from that. And also, I mean, this is probably what I use the most is just watching pros on YouTube or social media and hear what they have to say. People that have been doing it for longer than I've been alive. So that's probably where I've learned most.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't be afraid to just reach out to someone who you admire their work. Ask them a question.
Collaboration is key. I like how you touched on, being able to talk about your images with other photographers. That's a great way to improve. We have a question from YouTube. From CU on YouTube, how do you prepare to locate your subjects in the wild? So does anyone have any insight to, research before you go out?
Yeah, I mean, back to social media. I mean, a lot of people post photos and then from there, that kind of sparks your interest maybe of a subject you haven't photographed before. And from there, you can do more research on that subject. So I think it really comes down to understanding location and habits and figure out, I mean, it varies from month to month. So, bears are hibernating in the winter, and, mating season for alligators is different. Water levels drop and raise. So, I mean, it's tougher to see a gator in the summer than it is in the winter in certain places. So yeah, it just comes down to understanding what you're photographing and what you're looking for.
I think another key is if you want to capture an image of, let's say, an animal in the wild, I would suggest going to a preserve area or a state park or whatever and talk to the staff there, because they know, first of all of what's there. They know who's there when, and they also can guide you, in how to find them.
And of course, I'm the engineering in the group, so I'll go with technology, right? So I'm gonna throw a plug. I use Cornell's eBird, because if you go to the app and you're trying to find migratory birds that might be in some areas or sightings of birds in certain areas, you have tools online that will show you those patterns and where to find certain species, right? That in my opinion, like I said, that's part of the thrill, because you'll find like, okay, they saw this bird in this area, and then it kind of feels like a little bit of a hunt. So now you're driving to this place and hoping to get lucky, right? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but it's a great feeling when you actually are able to use those tools and then find that subject that you were searching for.
And one more thing, you don't have to go far, especially in Florida. I mean, anyone's backyard is going to have spiders in it, anything. So, I mean, you can get an award-winning photograph from your apartment balcony. I mean, so just go out, be curious, and you don't need to travel.
That's a great point. You don't have to go to a very, expansive. You might have an idea in your head of what you want to do, but what's found right in your backyard on your balcony, it can be just as captivating. Well, I think we've reached that point. I hate to end this conversation. It's been so great. But we are at that time where we're going to have to wrap up. So I do want to highlight that, this has been just an incredible conversation. We'd like to thank each of you again for your participation tonight and taking the time to be with us. And congratulations again on your wins. And we're just so happy to have you in our conservation community. Speaking to the audience, if you'd like to see more of these panelists' work, I highly recommend that you check them out. Please make sure to follow these photographers on their social media channels and their websites. Stan, how can people find you online?
The easiest way is Instagram, and my handle is CCOMSTAN, CCOMSTAN. And also, I have a couple of websites. Fine Art America is one of them that I use. That's the thing you see there, pixels.com. So you can see stuff in those two places.
Great. And we will be dropping all of these in the comments as well, so everyone can click the links in the comments. Marcos, where can people find you online?
Yeah, so I'm active on Instagram. So Wild Tigre, I think it's right here. WildTigre.com. That's my Wild Tigre on Instagram. That's my handle. I do have also a website that I just opened this year because I was getting a little bit of feedback. So that's wildtigrephotography.com, and you can find some of the pictures in my portfolio in there as well if you like to order and whatnot.
Great. What about you, Parks?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram, just my name, Parks Marilla. And I don't know if I mentioned this, you might not have a banner for it, but I plan on posting more to Facebook in the future. So that's just Parks Marilla Photography. And I'd like to also figure out how to start printing. So that'll come in the future.
There's always something more to do. Thank you all for sharing. So if you haven't connected with Florida Wildlife Federation yet online, we do encourage you to check out our monthly newsletter and sign up for that. You'll receive updates about everything coming up, such as our next live stream, which will be in October. So be sure to connect with us, and we will see you in October for our next live stream. On behalf of Florida Wildlife Federation, I want to thank the panelists again and every one of you that have tuned in tonight. Happy World Photography Day. And behind the scenes, I want to give thanks to Federico and Sarah and the entire FWF team for another successful photo contest this year. As we leave you tonight, we definitely want to encourage you to all keep exploring, keep appreciating Florida's wild beauty, and maybe even grab your own camera and start your photography journey. So again, thank you all and have a great night.
Thank you.